That is, to gamble that my relationship with the picture would not be revealed to the picture's ultimate damage.
Hollywood has always known how to make stars, and it has always known how to destroy them. In the 1960s and 1970s, the industry was going through one of the most turbulent periods in its history, and the people who crossed the wrong line, said the wrong thing, or simply refused to play by the rules paid a price that could last years. Here are 15 stars from the 60s and 70s that were banned by Hollywood, and the stories behind each one are something else entirely. Number 15. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda did not lose her career, but she came remarkably close, and the mechanism that nearly ended it was entirely of her own making. In July 1972, she traveled to Hanoi during the Vietnam War at the invitation of the North Vietnamese government, visited military installations, met with American prisoners of war, and was photographed sitting on a North Vietnamese anti-aircraft gun, a weapon of the type used to shoot down American aircraft. The photograph circulated worldwide and produced a level of public fury that she has never fully escaped. Born on December 21, 1937, in New York City, Fonda was the daughter of Henry Fonda and had been building a film career through the 1960s that was taking serious shape. Barbarella in 1968, They Shoot Horses, Don't They? In 1969, which earned her her first Academy Award nomination. Her political activism had been escalating through the early 1970s alongside her film work, and the Hanoi trip was the culmination of a public anti-war stance that had made her a target of the FBI and the Nixon administration well before the photograph. Several theater chains refused to show her films after the trip. Veterans groups organized boycotts that continued for decades. She was denied entry to military bases for USO-type events. The industry itself was divided. Some producers refused to work with her, while others, notably Alan Pakula and Sidney Pollack, continued to cast her in the projects that eventually won her a second Academy Award for Clute in 1972 and another for Coming Home in 1979. She has expressed regret about the photograph specifically while defending the underlying position. The photograph has followed her into every decade since 1972. Jane Fonda is 87 years old in 2026 and remains one of the most publicly visible survivors of the era. Number 14. Vanessa Redgrave. Vanessa Redgrave's blacklisting from significant portions of the American film industry in the late 1970s arrived in one specific and very public moment, her acceptance speech at the Academy Awards ceremony on March 29, 1978, where she won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for Julia. She used the speech to refer to a group of protesters outside the ceremony, members of the Jewish Defense League who were demonstrating against her involvement in a documentary about the Palestine Liberation Organization, as a small bunch of Zionist hoodlums. Born on January 30th, 1937 in London, Redgrave had been one of the most celebrated stage and screen actresses of her generation for more than a decade before that night. Her film work in the 1960s, Morgan in 1966, Blow Up in 1966, Camelot in 1967, Isadora in 1968, had established her as a performer of the first rank. She was a committed political activist of the far left, a member of the Workers' Revolutionary Party, and had produced and narrated a documentary called The Palestinian in 1977 that generated significant controversy before the Oscar ceremony made the controversy national. The speech produced immediate professional consequences in the United States. Network television declined to hire her. Several studio productions she had been attached to reconsidered. Paddy Chayefsky, accepting a separate award that evening, directly rebuked her from the podium in terms that made the broadcast uncomfortable to watch. She continued working in Britain and Europe throughout the period, and eventually returned to American film and television in the 1980s and beyond. But the relationship with the mainstream American industry was permanently altered by a speech that lasted approximately 90 seconds. Vanessa Redgrave is 88 years old in 2026 and remains active. Number 13, Kim Novak. Kim Novak's effective removal from meaningful studio employment was not the result of a single dramatic incident, but of a gradual process by which Harry Cohn, the head of Columbia Pictures, who had built her career from the ground up, lost his grip on the industry, and when he died in February 1958, the particular version of the studio system that had sustained her disappeared with him. Born Marilyn Pauline Novak in Chicago, Illinois, on February 13, 1933, she had been signed to Columbia in 1954, renamed, restyled, and deployed as the studio's answer to Marilyn Monroe with a thoroughness that left her very little control over her own image or career direction. She appeared in Picnic in 1955, The Man with the Golden Arm in 1955, Pal Joey in 1957, and Vertigo in 1958, a body of work that established her as a genuine screen presence rather than merely a manufactured commodity. Her relationship with Sammy Davis Jr. in 1957 produced one of the most explicit examples of studio interference in a performer's private life in the post-war era. Cohn, responding to threats from multiple directions, including mob figures with financial interests in Davis's career, intervened to end the relationship and arranged for Davis to marry quickly. The episode was conducted with a coercive force that had nothing to do with either performer's wishes. After Cohn's death, without the specific machinery of his patronage behind her, Novak found that the industry's interest in her diminished rapidly. She was not formally blacklisted. There was no list, no meeting, no official action. There was simply a gradual unavailability of the kinds of projects that had defined her peak years, followed by her own decision in the early 1970s to step away from Hollywood and relocate to Oregon. Kim Novak is 93 years old in 2026. Number 12, Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando was never formally banned from Hollywood. His talent was too large and too commercially proven for any studio to make that move, but he was effectively unemployable by most major productions for a significant stretch of the 1970s and into the 1980s, and the reasons were a combination of his own behavior and the industry's exhaustion with managing it. Born on April 3, 1924 in Omaha, Nebraska, Brando had transformed American film acting with A Streetcar Named Desire and the Wild One, and won his first Academy Award for On the Waterfront in 1954. Mutiny on the Bounty in 1962 went catastrophically over budget in ways substantially attributed to his behavior, establishing a reputation for professional difficulty that studios spent the following decade calculating against. The Godfather in 1972 revived his career and his Oscar record. He won his second Academy Award for Don Corleone and sent a Native American activist named Sacheen Littlefeather to decline it on his behalf, with a statement about Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans. Last Tango in Paris in 1973 generated international controversy that his career absorbed but did not escape. His behavior on Apocalypse Now in 1979, arriving enormously overweight for a role that required a lean military figure, refusing to read the source material, forcing director Francis Ford Coppola to essentially improvise an entire third act around his availability, produced a formal understanding between Brando and several studios that the financial risk of employing him had become too great to justify. Marlon Brando died on July 1, 2004 in Los Angeles at the age of 80. Number 11, Peter Sellers. Peter Sellers was one of the most gifted comic performers of the 20th century and one of the most genuinely difficult people in the film industry by the consistent testimony of almost everyone who made a film with him. The combination produced a career punctuated by formal bans, informal blacklistings, and at least one instance of a director destroying a completed film rather than release it with Sellers' name on it. Born Richard Henry Sellers in Southsea, Hampshire, England, on September 8, 1925, Sellers had built his reputation through BBC Radio's The Goon Show before transitioning to film in the late 1950s. His ability to inhabit multiple characters in a single film, most famously playing 3 roles simultaneously in Dr. Strangelove in 1964, made him uniquely valuable and uniquely problematic, since the method required absolute creative control that clashed with every director who tried to exercise their own. His behavior on Casino Royale in 1967, a troubled production involving multiple directors, included refusing to film scenes opposite Orson Welles, having Welles's scenes reshot without his presence, and walking off the production with scenes unfinished. Sellers was blamed for the production's failure by the producers with a specificity that damaged his commercial standing in the American market. His heart attacks, the first in 1964, severe enough that he required resuscitation, affected his behavior in ways his directors described as making an already unpredictable performer genuinely unmanageable. Director Billy Wilder, who made Kiss Me stupid with him in 1964 and watched him walk off that production following a heart attack, vowed never to work with him again. Peter Sellers died on July 24, 1980 in London at the age of 54 from a heart attack. Number 10, Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's conflicts with the film industry were bilateral. He was as likely to walk away from a production as to be removed from one, and distinguishing between the two in specific cases is often a matter of which account you choose to believe. What is consistent across multiple incidents is that by the late 1960s, the specific version of Hollywood that had accommodated his behavior for 2 decades was changing in ways his approach did not adapt to. Born Francis Albert Sinatra in Hoboken, New Jersey, on December 12, 1915, Sinatra had experienced the full range of Hollywood's treatment, the meteoric rise, the complete career collapse around 1950, and then the comeback anchored by From Here to Eternity in 1953, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. His relationship with directors was defined by a fundamental unwillingness to do multiple takes. He believed the freshness of the first performance was irreplaceable, and directors who required additional takes found themselves in a negotiation they rarely won. His relationships with the press were equally combative. He maintained a list of journalists he refused to speak to that expanded consistently over the years until it covered most of the entertainment press. The industry managed this because his commercial value justified it until the early 1970s, when his film projects stopped performing. He announced his retirement in 1971, returned in 1973, and spent the rest of his career primarily in concert. Frank Sinatra died on May 14, 1998, in Los Angeles at the age of 82. Number 9, Dalton Trumbo. Dalton Trumbo was not a performer, but no list of people banned by Hollywood in the 20th century can reasonably exclude him. He was the most celebrated screenwriter of his generation, the author of Kitty Foyle, 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, and Spartacus, and he spent 11 years writing under assumed names after being blacklisted by the Hollywood studios in 1947 for refusing to cooperate with the House Un-American Activities Committee. Born James Dalton Trumbo in Montrose, Colorado on December 9, 1905, Trumbo had been one of the highest-paid screenwriters in Hollywood when HUAC began its investigation of communist influence in the film industry. He was one of the Hollywood 10, a group of directors, writers, and producers who refused to answer the committee's questions and were cited for contempt of Congress as a result. Trumbo served 11 months in federal prison at the Federal Correctional Institution in Ashland, Kentucky, from 1950 to 1951. After his release, he continued writing under pseudonyms, Roman Holiday in 1953, for which the credited writer Ian McClellan Hunter accepted the Academy Award, and which was formally credited to Trumbo posthumously in 2011, and The Brave One in 1956, for which the pseudonym Robert Rich won the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, creating one of the most awkward moments in Academy history when no one appeared to collect it. The blacklist broke formally in 1960 when director Otto Preminger announced that Trumbo had written Exodus under his own name, and Kirk Douglas simultaneously announced that Trumbo had written Spartacus. The public response was not the industry catastrophe that studios had spent 13 years fearing. Dalton Trumbo died on September 10, 1976, in Los Angeles at the age of 70. Number 8. Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate's story is not one of blacklisting or professional conflict. It is one of a career that was building towards something significant and was ended before it could arrive. She is on this list because the manner of her death effectively removed her from a Hollywood that was in the process of taking her seriously, and the aftermath of that removal reshaped the industry's relationship to its own mythology in ways that took decades to process. Born on January 24, 1943, in Dallas, Texas, Tate had spent her early years moving with her military family before arriving in Hollywood and signing with producer Martin Ransohoff. She appeared in the Americanization of Emily in 1964, Eye of the Devil in 1966, and Valley of the Dolls in 1967, a commercial success that established her as a recognizable face. Her performance in The Fearless Vampire Killers in 1967, directed by Roman Polanski, whom she married in January 1968, showed a comic lightness and physical ease that critics noticed. She was murdered on August 9, 1969, at her home at 150 Cielo Drive in Los Angeles by members of the Manson family. She was 26 years old and 8.5 months pregnant. The murders and the subsequent trial that dominated public attention through 1970 and 1971 produced a specific rupture in the communal mythology of the 1960s, the sense that the decade's optimism had been met at its conclusion by something that could not be accommodated or explained by any of the frameworks the decade had constructed. The career she would have had remains entirely unknowable. Number 7. O.J. Simpson. O.J. Simpson's film career in the 1970s was built on the same foundation as his public persona: the exceptional athlete, the charming personality, the man whose ease in front of cameras translated naturally from the football field to the screen. The Naked Gun franchise and a series of dramatic roles through the decade made him a recognizable film presence before the events of 1994 made everything before them impossible to discuss on its own terms. Born Orenthal James Simpson in San Francisco, California, on July 9, 1947, Simpson had won the Heisman Trophy in 1968 at the University of Southern California and become one of the most celebrated running backs in NFL history during his career with the Buffalo Bills. His transition to acting was managed with the same smooth professionalism as his transition from college to professional football. He appeared in The Klansman in 1974, The Towering Inferno in 1974, and Capricorn 1 in 1978, before the Naked Gun comedies made him a mainstream comedy presence in the late 1980s. His arrest in June 1994 for the murders of his former wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman, the televised car chase, the trial that ran through 1995, and his acquittal in October. 1995 ended his career in film completely and instantaneously. No studio or network worked with him in any meaningful capacity after the acquittal. He was found liable for the deaths in a civil trial in 1997 and ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages. O.J. Simpson died on April 10, 2024, in Las Vegas, Nevada, at the age of 76, from prostate cancer. Number 6. Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski's relationship with the American film industry since 1977 has been one of the most complicated ongoing situations in Hollywood history. A director of unquestioned major talent who cannot legally enter the country where his most celebrated films were made, and whose continued recognition by the industry has generated controversy that shows no sign of resolution. Born Raymond Thierry Polanski in Paris on August 18, 1933, to Polish Jewish parents who returned to Poland before the war, Polanski survived the Krakow ghetto as a child after his parents were taken. His mother died at Auschwitz, and built a film career that moved from Poland to France to Britain to Hollywood, where Rosemary's Baby in 1968 and Chinatown in 1974 established him as one of the most significant directors working in American cinema. In 1977, he pleaded guilty to unlawful intercourse with a 13-year-old girl named Samantha Gailey at a party in Los Angeles. Before sentencing, he fled to France and has not returned to the United States since. He has continued making films from Europe, Tess in 1979, The Pianist in 2002, for which he won the Academy Award for Best Director, The Ghostwriter in 2010, while living under the specific condition of being a fugitive from American justice. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences expelled him in 2018. France, where he holds citizenship, has declined multiple American extradition requests. Roman Polanski is 91 years old in 2026. Number 5. Brigitte Bardot. Brigitte Bardot left Hollywood on her own terms. She was not banned so much as she found the entire apparatus of international stardom so suffocating that she dismantled it herself before it could do anything further to her. Born Camille Javel on September 28, 1934 in Paris, Bardot had been an international phenomenon from the mid-1950s onward and had worked with American and international producers throughout the 1960s. Her relationship with the Hollywood system was always arm's length. She was French, she worked primarily in European productions, and the attempts to absorb her into the American studio framework never quite succeeded the way they had with other European actresses of her generation. What ended her film career was her own decision. In 1973, at 39, she announced her retirement from acting and redirected her energy entirely toward animal rights advocacy. She sold jewelry and personal belongings to fund her foundation, campaigned publicly against the Canadian seal hunt and the fur trade, and has pursued those causes with the same intensity she once brought to her screen work. The Hollywood she left in 1973 has been replaced several times over, and Bardot has observed those transformations from Saint-Tropez with consistent indifference. Her later interviews on immigration and other political subjects generated controversy internationally and complicated a legacy that had once been associated primarily with freedom and self-determination. Brigitte Bardot is 91 years old in 2026. Number 4. Roscoe. Fatty Arbuckle was one of the highest-paid performers in early Hollywood, a genuinely gifted physical comedian whose slapstick films with Buster Keaton made him an international star in the late 1910s and early 1920s. His career was destroyed not by what he did, but by what he was accused of doing, and the press and industry machinery that turned an accusation into a verdict before any court had heard a word of testimony. Born Roscoe Conkling Arbuckle in Smith Center, Kansas, on March 24, 1887, he had been performing in vaudeville from childhood and was one of Paramount's most valuable properties when a party at the St. Francis Hotel in San Francisco over the Labor Day weekend of September 1921 changed everything. Virginia Rapp, a model and actress present at the party, became severely ill and died 4 days later of a ruptured bladder. Bambina Maud Delmont, a woman at the party with a documented history of running extortion schemes, accused Arbuckle of sexually assaulting Rapp in a manner that caused her death. William Randolph Hearst's newspapers ran the accusation as established fact across their national circulation before any investigation had concluded. The film industry, responding to the press pressure, banned Arbuckle's films from exhibition and ended his ability to work while his legal situation was still unresolved. He was tried 3 times. The first 2 trials ended in hung juries. The third ended in an acquittal accompanied by a written jury apology to Arbuckle for what he had been subjected to. The industry lifted its ban in 1923, 2 years too late for his career to recover. He worked as a director under the pseudonym William Goodrich for the following decade and had just signed a Warner Brothers contract for a full public comeback when he died of a heart attack on June 29, 1933, at the age of 46. Number 3. Anita Bryant. Anita Bryant had a recording career in the early 1960s that produced several charting singles and a visibility that led to her becoming the public face of the Florida Citrus Commission, a role she held from 1969 to 1979, and that kept her in American living rooms through television advertising throughout the decade. Born on March 25, 1940 in Barnsdall, Oklahoma, Bryant had competed in the Miss America pageant in 1959, finishing as runner-up, and had built a career as a singer and entertainer that was family-friendly and commercially reliable. Her association with the Florida Citrus Commission gave her a platform that she used in 1977 to lead a campaign called Save Our Children, organized against a Dade County, Florida ordinance that prohibited discrimination based on orientation. The campaign succeeded. The ordinance was repealed by a public vote in June 1977, and Bryant became a national figure of the emerging culture war around gay rights. The response from the entertainment industry and from the general commercial world was swift. The Florida Citrus Commission declined to renew her contract in 1979. Bookings for personal appearances dried up. Recording opportunities disappeared. Advertisers who had previously used her name and image distanced themselves from the association. She filed for bankruptcy in 1997. She has continued performing occasionally in Christian-oriented venues. Anita Bryant is 85 years old in 2026. Number 2, Lillian Hellman. Lillian Hellman was one of the most successful playwrights and screenwriters in American entertainment when the House Un-American Activities Committee called her to testify in 1952. Her response, a letter to the committee in which she stated that she was willing to testify about herself, but not about others, and that she would not cut my conscience to fit this year's fashions, is one of the most celebrated individual acts of resistance to the Hollywood blacklist. Born in New Orleans, Louisiana, on June 20th, 1905, Hellman had written The Children's Hour in 1934, The Little Foxes in 1939, and Watch on the Rhine in 1941, as well as numerous screenplays produced by the Hollywood studios. Her long relationship with writer Dashiell Hammett, who was himself imprisoned for contempt during the HUAC period, shaped her politics and her public willingness to accept personal consequence for her positions. The blacklist that followed her 1952 testimony cost her work in Hollywood for the rest of the decade. Her plays continued to be produced in New York and abroad, but the film industry that had paid her well for screenplay work closed that door effectively for years. She wrote her memoirs in 3 volumes, An Unfinished Woman in 1969, Pentimento in 1973, and Scoundrel Time in 1976, the last of which addressed the HUAC period directly and generated considerable controversy when Mary McCarthy challenged the accuracy of her accounts on public television. Lillian Hellman died on June 30th, 1984, in Martha's Vineyard, Massachusetts, at the age of 79. Number 1, Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin's effective banishment from the United States in 1952 was one of the most dramatic exits in the history of American entertainment. a man who had spent 40 years building an industry, who had been one of the most famous people in the world for 3 decades, told by the Attorney General that he would not be readmitted to the country that had made him. Born Charles Spencer Chaplin in London on April 16, 1889, Chaplin had arrived in America in 1913 as part of a vaudeville tour and never left. Not legally, not in any formal sense, though he had never applied for citizenship. He lived in the United States for nearly 4 decades, built United Artists with Douglas Fairbanks, Mary Pickford, and D.W. Griffith, and made the films that constituted the foundation of American cinema comedy. His politics: he was sympathetic to left-wing causes, made films that were read as socialist in their sympathies, and refused to publicly condemn the Soviet Union during the Cold War, had put him under FBI surveillance that J. Edgar Hoover managed personally for years. His personal life, the marriages to very young women, the paternity suits, had generated additional hostility from the press and from conservative political figures who found in his lifestyle and his politics an effective combination to attack. In September 1952, while Chaplin was traveling to England for the premiere of Limelight, the Attorney General James McGranary revoked his re-entry permit, citing allegations related to his moral character and his political views. Chaplin elected not to fight the decision. He settled in Coursier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, with his wife Una O'Neill and their children, and did not return to the United States until 1972, 20 years later, when he received an honorary Academy Award and a 12-minute standing ovation from an industry that had participated in his exile. Charlie Chaplin died on December 25, 1977, in Coursier-sur-Vevey, Switzerland, at the age of 88. The bans and blacklistings in this list came from different directions: congressional committees, studio executives, public boycotts, criminal charges, and in some cases, the performers' own decisions to walk away before the industry could show them the door. What connects them is the basic fact that Hollywood, for all its self-mythology about freedom of expression, has always been capable of deciding that certain people were more trouble than they were worth. Some of those decisions were defensible, some were not. Some of the people on this list were victims of genuine injustice. Some brought their situations entirely upon themselves. Most fit somewhere in the complicated middle, where the truth about any famous life usually lives. If this kind of Hollywood history is what brings you here, hit that like button and subscribe. There is a lot more coming.